Hello and welcome to JK Wisdom Beyond Time, a place where ancient wisdom meets modern life and where the timeless questions of human existence continue to guide us through an ever-changing world. I am truly grateful that you are here. Have you ever noticed how some of the most beautiful things in life can also become the source of our deepest pain? The people we love, the dreams we hold close to our hearts, the identities we build over decades, the expectations we quietly carry about how life is supposed to unfold. For a while, these things give us meaning. They give us comfort. They give us a sense of belonging. And then, sometimes without warning, life changes. A relationship ends. A child grows up. A career that once defined us comes to an unexpected close. Someone we thought would always be there suddenly becomes a memory. And in those moments, we are confronted with one of the oldest questions ever asked by humanity. Why does the heart suffer when it loses what it loves? This question is not new. It has traveled through centuries, across civilizations, through temples, monasteries, libraries, battlefields, and quiet moments of reflection. Long before modern psychology began studying human attachment, ancient thinkers were already trying to understand why human beings cling so deeply to people, possessions, identities, and expectations. Different cultures offered different perspectives. Yet remarkably, many of them arrived at a similar realization. Perhaps suffering is not created by love itself, but by our desire to make temporary things permanent. And perhaps true inner peace begins when we learn the delicate art of loving deeply, without trying to possess everything that life gives us. Tonight, we explore that timeless mystery together. Not as followers of any single tradition, not as believers or non-believers, but simply as human beings, sharing the same hopes, the same fears, and the same longing to understand ourselves a little better. Perhaps the strangest thing about human life is that we willingly give our hearts to things we know we cannot keep forever. We fall in love, knowing that people change. We build careers, knowing that one day we may have to walk away from them. We raise children, knowing that their purpose is not to stay but to grow beyond us. And yet, we continue to love. We continue to dream. We continue to hold on. Maybe that is what makes us human. Several years ago, a psychologist was asked a simple question by one of his patients. The patient said, "If I know that everything in life is temporary, why should I allow myself to become attached to anything at all?" It is a beautiful question, and perhaps one that every human being asks in one form or another. Why open your heart if loss is inevitable? Why build something if one day it may disappear? Why love deeply if love also carries the possibility of grief? The answer, surprisingly, is not to avoid attachment altogether. Because without connection, life loses its color. Without relationships, achievements, memories, and dreams, human existence becomes empty. The problem is not connection. The problem is when connection quietly transforms into possession. When love becomes ownership. When appreciation becomes dependence. When a relationship stops being a shared journey and becomes the foundation of our entire identity. Modern life encourages this more than ever before. People introduce themselves through what they do. Their careers become who they are. Their social status becomes their self-worth. Their relationships become the measure of their happiness. And when any of these things begin to change, the mind experiences something that psychologists call identity disruption. The suffering is not simply about losing something external. It is about losing the version of ourselves that was built around it. A retired athlete does not only lose a profession, he loses the person he believed himself to be. A parent whose children leave home does not only experience an empty house. They must rediscover who they are beyond the role that once defined their daily existence. A person after a difficult breakup often asks a deeper question than, "Why did this happen?" They ask, "Who am I now?" Perhaps this is why human suffering feels so personal. Because attachment is rarely about the object itself. It is about the stories we create around it, the future we imagined, the certainty we believed existed, the identity we carefully constructed over time. And when reality refuses to follow that script, the heart struggles to adapt. Yet history suggests that this struggle is not a modern problem. Long before neuroscience, long before psychology textbooks, thoughtful men and women observed these same patterns within themselves. They understood that the human mind possesses a remarkable ability. The ability to turn temporary experiences into permanent expectations. And perhaps that is where suffering quietly begins. Not in loving, not in caring, but in believing that what was given to us for a season was meant to belong to us forever. Modern psychology offers an interesting perspective on all of this. According to researchers, the human brain is not designed merely to seek happiness. It is designed to seek safety. And throughout our evolutionary history, attachment meant survival. To belong to a family meant protection. To remain close to a community meant security. To maintain strong emotional bonds increased the chances of living another day. In many ways, our ancestors survived because they learned to hold on. And so, the human nervous system developed an extraordinary sensitivity toward loss. It treats separation as danger. It interprets uncertainty as a threat. It searches constantly for stability in a world that has never been completely stable. This is why rejection hurts. Why heartbreak feels physical. Why losing a job can create anxiety that extends far beyond financial concerns. The mind is not simply reacting to an event. It is responding to a disruption in its sense of safety and identity. Modern attachment theory suggests that the emotional patterns we develop early in life often shape the way we connect with others as adults. Some people learn to trust easily. Others become deeply anxious about abandonment. Some seek constant reassurance. Others avoid closeness altogether, fearing vulnerability itself. But beneath these different patterns lies the same universal desire. The desire to feel secure in an uncertain world. And perhaps there is nothing more human than that. Yet an important distinction must be made. Security is not the same as control. The mind often believes that if it can hold on tightly enough, plan carefully enough, or avoid enough risks, it can prevent suffering altogether. But life has a way of reminding us that certainty is an illusion. People change. Circumstances evolve. Dreams transform. And sometimes the things we fear losing are never truly ours to possess in the first place. This realization can feel frightening. But it can also become the beginning of freedom. Because if our peace depends entirely on external circumstances, then our inner world remains at the mercy of forces we cannot control. Every success becomes a source of anxiety. Every relationship becomes a potential loss. Every achievement carries the hidden fear that it might one day disappear. Psychologists today often speak about the importance of internal validation. The ability to derive self-worth from values, character, and personal growth rather than from constant external approval. The healthiest relationships, they say, are not built upon emotional dependence, but upon mutual respect and individual wholeness. To love another person deeply while still remaining connected to your own identity. To care without controlling. To support without possessing. To appreciate without demanding permanence. Remarkably, these ideas are not entirely new. Thousands of years ago, on a battlefield far removed from modern laboratories and psychological research, another conversation was unfolding. A conversation that explored the same questions that continue to challenge humanity today. Questions about fear, about loss, about responsibility, and about the difficult balance between love, duty, and inner freedom. The language was different. The culture was different. But the human heart was exactly the same. More than 2000 years ago, an extraordinary conversation took place on an ancient battlefield in India. It was not a conversation about conquering kingdoms, nor was it simply a discussion about victory or defeat. At its heart, it was a deeply human conversation about fear, attachment, responsibility, and the struggle to remain at peace in a world that constantly changes. A warrior stood in the middle of uncertainty. Everything he loved seemed to stand on the opposite side. His teachers, his relatives, his friends. The life he had always known was slipping away, and for the first time, the future felt impossible to understand. He was not weak. He was not incapable. He was simply overwhelmed by something that every human being experiences at some point in life: the pain of attachment colliding with reality. He wanted to hold on to the world exactly as it had been. He wanted certainty. He wanted to avoid loss. And perhaps, if we are honest with ourselves, so do we. We may not stand on ancient battlefields, but we stand in our own moments of uncertainty. A marriage that begins to change. A career that no longer provides meaning. A dream that fails to unfold as we imagined. The emotions are different only in appearance. The human experience remains remarkably similar. What makes that ancient dialogue so powerful is that it never asks people to stop loving. It never encourages emotional coldness or indifference. Instead, it introduces a far more difficult idea: to participate fully in life, to love deeply, to fulfill our responsibilities, and yet not allow our inner peace to depend entirely upon outcomes that remain beyond our control. In modern language, we might call this emotional resilience. The ability to remain grounded even when circumstances change. The capacity to act according to values rather than fear. The wisdom to recognize that while we can guide our efforts, we cannot control every result that life produces. This perspective challenges one of the deepest instincts of the human mind: the instinct to possess, to hold tightly, to believe that permanence can be created through effort alone. Yet every season reminds us otherwise. Spring becomes summer. Summer gives way to autumn. Children become adults. Parents grow older. Entire chapters of life quietly come to an end, making room for new beginnings. The ancient teachers understood something that modern psychology increasingly recognizes. Suffering often intensifies when we resist the natural movement of life itself. When we demand certainty from an uncertain world. When we seek permanence within experiences that were always meant to evolve. Perhaps true strength is not found in controlling change. Perhaps it is found in learning how to walk gracefully alongside it. And this understanding appears far beyond any single culture or tradition. Across different civilizations, thoughtful people arrived at remarkably similar insights. Some found those truths in philosophy. Others found them in silence. Others discovered them through meditation and deep reflection upon the nature of human existence. And among those voices, one particular tradition placed the experience of suffering at the very center of its search for wisdom. Centuries later, another seeker would begin his own journey with a question that continues to echo through the modern world. Why do human beings suffer? Not occasionally, not in extraordinary circumstances, but as an inevitable part of ordinary life. Why does the mind cling to moments that are already passing? Why do we fear change, even though change is the only constant we have ever known? And why do we spend so much of our lives trying to hold on to things that were never meant to remain exactly as they are? The insights that emerged from this search were both simple and profound. Human suffering, it suggested, is often intensified by craving, by the desire for life to obey our expectations, by the hope that beautiful moments will last forever, by the belief that people, identities, and experiences can somehow be protected from the passage of time. Yet reality moves according to its own rhythm. The seasons change. The body changes. Relationships evolve. Entire civilizations rise and fall. Nothing in nature remains frozen. And perhaps the tragedy of human suffering is not that things change, but that we continuously ask them not to. There is a quiet irony in the way we live. The very things that bring us the greatest joy also carry the possibility of loss. To love deeply is to become vulnerable. To build a meaningful life is to accept uncertainty. To care about another person is to recognize that one day, in one form or another, change will arrive. But this realization is not meant to make us fearful. It is meant to make us present. Because when we understand that life is temporary, gratitude becomes more natural. A conversation with a loved one becomes more precious. A quiet morning becomes something extraordinary. The ordinary moments that once escaped our attention suddenly reveal their beauty. Modern psychologists sometimes describe this as mindful awareness. The practice of experiencing life as it unfolds rather than constantly demanding that it remain the same. To appreciate without possessing. To participate without controlling. To love without building our entire identity around the object of our affection. This does not mean becoming indifferent. It does not mean withdrawing from relationships or abandoning ambition. It means understanding the difference between holding something gently and holding it so tightly that its possible loss destroys our peace. Perhaps true freedom is not the absence of attachment. Perhaps it is the ability to embrace life fully while remaining at peace with its impermanence. And maybe that is one of the greatest paradoxes of human existence. The more we accept that everything changes, the more deeply we can appreciate what is here right now. Because nothing lasts forever. And precisely because of that, everything becomes infinitely valuable. So what does all of this mean for the world we live in today? What does attachment look like in an age of smartphones, social media, endless ambition, and constant comparison? Perhaps more than ever before, modern life encourages us to build our identities around things that were never designed to carry the weight of our entire existence. We become attached to our careers, not simply as a way of contributing to society, but as proof of our worth. We introduce ourselves by what we do. We measure our value through achievements, promotions, and recognition. And when those things begin to change, we often feel as though we ourselves are disappearing. We become attached to digital approval, a number on a screen, a collection of likes, the opinions of strangers who know almost nothing about our lives. Without realizing it, our inner peace becomes dependent upon forces completely outside our control. The human mind has always desired acceptance. But never before in history has it been exposed to so much comparison, so much noise, and so many expectations at once. Relationships too have become increasingly complicated. We often hear people say, "You complete me." It sounds beautiful, romantic even. But perhaps no human being was ever meant to carry the responsibility of completing another. Healthy love is not built upon emotional dependence. It is built upon two whole individuals choosing to walk through life together. Not because they fear being alone, but because they enrich one another's journey. The difference is subtle yet profound. One says, "I need you in order to be happy." The other says, "My life is better because you are in it, but my peace does not depend entirely upon your presence." One creates fear, the other creates freedom. The same principle applies to parenting. Every loving parent wants to protect their children, to guide them, to keep them close. And yet, the greatest act of love may be learning to let them become who they were always meant to be. To support without controlling. To care without possessing. To accept that growth itself requires change. Even our dreams deserve this kind of wisdom. There is nothing wrong with ambition. Nothing wrong with working hard, building a meaningful career, or pursuing extraordinary goals. But perhaps we suffer most when our happiness becomes permanently tied to a single outcome. When we believe that one promotion, one relationship, one opportunity, or one achievement will finally complete us. Life rarely unfolds according to our plans. And yet, some of the most beautiful moments we experience arrive through doors we never intended to open. Maybe resilience is not about lowering our expectations. Maybe it is about expanding our capacity to adapt, to remain grounded when life changes direction, to continue loving, creating, and contributing even when certainty disappears. Because the truth is, nothing that truly belongs within us can ever be taken away. Character remains. Wisdom remains. Kindness remains. The lessons we learn through suffering remain. And perhaps the deepest form of security is not found in holding on to the world, but in developing an inner foundation strong enough to walk peacefully through its constant changes. Perhaps the greatest misunderstanding about attachment is the belief that wisdom asks us to love less. But the opposite may be true. Maybe wisdom teaches us how to love more deeply, without allowing fear to control the experience. To appreciate people while they are here. To celebrate the seasons of life as they unfold. To hold our dreams with passion, yet with the humility to accept that life sometimes writes a different story. Because nothing in this world was ever promised to us forever. Not the people we cherish. Not the roles we play. Not the identities we build. And strangely enough, it is this very impermanence that gives life its beauty. A sunset moves us precisely because it does not last. Childhood becomes precious because it eventually fades into memory. A conversation with someone we love matters because we know somewhere deep within ourselves that time is limited. The human heart longs for permanence. Yet the world continues to teach the wisdom of change. And perhaps maturity begins when we stop fighting that truth. Not with resignation, not with indifference, but with gratitude. The gratitude to say, thank you for the moments that were given. Thank you for the people who walked beside me. Thank you for the lessons hidden within both joy and sorrow. Ancient thinkers, philosophers, and modern psychologists may speak different languages. Yet they often point toward the same understanding. True peace does not come from controlling life. It comes from participating fully in life while accepting that change is part of the human experience. To love without possession. To care without fear. To build without attaching our entire identity to what we create. And to remember that the strongest foundation we will ever have is the one we build within ourselves. Maybe letting go is not about losing something. Maybe it is about making space for life to continue flowing. For new relationships, new chapters, new understandings, and a deeper appreciation for everything that exists in this present moment. If there is one timeless lesson that humanity has been rediscovering for thousands of years, perhaps it is this. Love deeply. Live fully. But hold gently. Because the moment we stop trying to possess the world, we finally become free enough to experience its beauty. Thank you for spending these moments with me. And if reflections like these resonate with you, I invite you to join our growing community here at JK Wisdom Beyond Time, where ancient wisdom meets modern life, and where together we continue exploring the timeless questions that shape the human journey. Until next time, take care of your mind. Take care of your heart, and never stop seeking the wisdom that helps us live with greater peace, greater purpose, and a deeper understanding of what it truly means to be human.
In the end, we begin to understand that the journey was always the destination.